This YouTube video is published by the educational team of the Destroyer Escort Historical Museum. The first part of the saga focused on A.B. Bofors, the Swedish company that designed and marketed the 40mm Bofors gun. By 1939, it was recognized by many as the world's best AA gun. The next part of the saga involves a complex story where both the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy independently evaluated the 40mm Bofors. Before World War II, this was the norm. They rarely worked together. The Department of Defense was created in 1947. Before then, the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy were independent departments, with cabinet-level secretaries reporting directly to the President of the United States. From 1939 till 1940, the Great Depression was still active. There was a buddy, can you spare a dime mentality. Yes, leaders in both the Army and the Navy saw the emerging threat of air power. For perhaps 10 years, they were each trying to adjust the problem, but they didn't have enough money to come up with two independent solutions. In 1936, thanks to a G2 report made by the military attaché in London, the Army's Ordnance Department was made aware of a competitive test of AA guns. In this test, a 37mm AA gun, very similar to the U.S. 37mm M1 gun, was rated as the minimum acceptable gun. The 40mm Bofors rated far ahead of the pack. Early in 1937, there was enough interest, and the Army attempted to get a copy for demonstration purposes, but A.B. Bofors refused. While not specified, I believe that they were seeking to ensure that all their worldwide patent applications were processed. The chief of coastal artillery was most enthusiastic. He had two officers witness a Bofors 40mm demonstration in Sweden in August of 1937. The Army Chief of Ordnance had the attaché in Berlin ask Bofors for a quotation once again. This time, Bofors noted that delivery would take at least 2 years, but they countered with the suggestion that the U.S. Army purchase manufacturing rights. The War Department balked. Not made here. They remained committed to the 37mm M1 gun. Realizing that a big opportunity might be lost, A.B. Bofors reversed their position regarding the demonstration gun. Unfortunately, by happenstance or by design, a series of telegrams were misread, and opportunity was lost. A report on this entire episode, with citations, was made in the middle of 1944. Quote, that decision turned American attention once again to our own 37mm AA gun, on which considerable effort was expended for its further development and manufacture. Even though it had already believed to be inferior, that decision delayed for about 2 more years the adoption of a greatly superior gun. The Naval Administrative History, within the Bureau of Ordnance volume, there's a chapter on the 40mm. It notes that, quote, there were several threads to the Bofors story prior to the establishment of manufacturing facilities and the Navy's purchase of manufacturing rights from the Bofors Company, unquote. Thread number 1. In the fall of 1939, shortly after the start of World War II, the chief of the Bureau of Ordnance, Admiral Furlong, became particularly interested in the 40mm Bofors. It was brought to his attention by Mr. Henry Howard. This was somewhat unusual, perhaps serendipitous. Mr. Howard wasn't in the Navy, nor was he directly associated with the Navy. Professionally, he was an engineer, a chemical engineer. In the summer of 1939, he was perhaps one of 36 Americans who attended the International Chamber of Commerce meeting in Copenhagen, Denmark. Mr. Howard learned about the Bofors gun in Nassau in February 1939. This was probably a yachting event. Werner Gren owned A.B. Bofors, and he owned one of the biggest yachts in the world, the Southern Cross. It's reputed that he had a model of the 40mm Bofors aboard. On October 11, 1939, Admiral Furlong requested a series of reports before approving the purchase of a Bofors 40mm for evaluation. The results were mixed. Why did Section M, Mounts, advise against the 40mm Bofors? Another thread is noted in the Naval Administrative History regarding a private company, York Safe and Lock. It's not clear if Mr. Cunningham was at the ICC conference or if his Bofors demonstration was the same one that Mr. Henry Howard's attended. Mr. Cunningham was the assistant to S. Forey Locks, the owner and CEO of York Safe and Lock, which is headquartered in York, Pennsylvania. This company was one of the prime contractors for the Army 37mm AA gun. The Army record also notes that the Swedish legation, acting on behalf of the Bofors Company, opened negotiations with the company to manufacture the Bofors gun in the United States. On October 27, 1939, York Safe and Locks officially notified Bureau and requested permission to continue discussions. Bureau was quick to respond, generally favorable. The Navy reiterated a desire to obtain a gun for test purposes. After that, the plan for York Safe and Lock to acquire the manufacturing rights progressed slowly. In early April 1940, representatives started for Sweden, probably to conclude the deal. On April 9th, Germany invaded Norway and Denmark. That put an end to the plan. The company never did directly license the manufacture, but they did become a prime contractor for the U.S. Navy. When Germany invaded Norway and Denmark, Britain was still considered the ruler of the seas. This was the first time they faced serious air action. They discovered that their naval AA guns were somewhat wanting. In the spring of 1940, Norway, Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, and France were all invaded. Air power clearly dominated. Anti-air gunnery was lacking, but the 40mm Bofors gun performed very well. The U.S. Navy then started negotiations directly with A.B. Bofors for a demonstration gun. The deal closed quickly on July 26, 1940, but it expressly excluded manufacturing rights. Getting the gun wasn't easy. While Sweden and the United States were still neutral, the gun would have to be transported across a very hot war zone. Earlier in the month, FDR directed that a U.S. Army transport, USAT, American Legion, would travel to Petsamo in northern Finland. There she would embark the Crown Princess Martha of Norway and her party and bring them to the United States. The ship was also going to transfer American diplomats and refugees from Norway and Denmark. The total number of people on board approached 900. If the Bofors gun was discovered, it would strain U.S. neutrality and perhaps put everyone's freedom and lives in danger. The American Legion left Finland on August 16th and arrived in New York City on August 28th. During the Bofors negotiation and the American Legion journey, big changes were also occurring at the Bureau of Ordnance. To address the immediate threat, in August, Admiral Stark established the Anti-Aircraft Defense Board, with Admiral King in charge. His team members would include a few renowned gunnery experts, Captain Willis Lee and Captain H.P. Blandy, and, on occasion, there may have been an observer, Captain Dan Callahan. He was the naval advisor to FDR. The book, The Fighting Admiral, describes Captain Callahan's interactions with FDR and with the AA Defense Board, but it was written 10 years after his death by Dr. Francis X. Murphy, a respected author, but the book was very critically reviewed. Regardless of Captain Callahan's direct involvement, in August there was an important Bofors Dog and Pony show for members of the AA Defense Board on a Dutch warship, the HNLMS Van Kinsberg. Captain Blandy, who led the delegation, noted this was an international affair. They were impressed by the Bofors 40mm gun, but not with the fire control system. Since there were no aerial targets available in Trinidad, CNO ordered the USS Tuscaloosa to travel about 1,500 miles to have planes available to tow for targets. The show was arranged with the cooperation of the Dutch Naval Attaché in Washington, D.C., Captain Johan Remft. He was also responsible for the Dutch-American Purchasing Office. In August 1940, the Dutch still controlled Dutch East Indies, modern Indonesia, and they were actively looking for alternative sources for weapons to defend these colonies. Obviously, one of these weapons was the Bofors 40mm, and it just so happened that they had a complete set of drawings in Java. These were immediately microfilmed and sent to Washington by a Pan American clipper. The official account noted that negotiations with the Bofors company were proceeding well until the government of Sweden got involved. Then there were additional quid pro quo demands that were finally withdrawn in April of 1941. The contract was ultimately signed in June of 1941. In early September, General Marshall reached out to Sir Henry Tizard and requested the Bofors gun, the version used by the British Army. The British had obtained manufacturing licenses several years ago, and it was in wide production in Britain and recently in Canada. Meanwhile, the Navy had arranged a comprehensive test with their gun at the Dahlgren Proving Ground on October 15, 1940. This test was witnessed by Army and Navy and British Ordnance officers and engineers. The Secretary of Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations was also there. The Army Bofors 40mm was tested at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds on November 25th, and there was a second follow-up test at Fort Monroe on December 9th. The Bofors 40mm was approved overwhelmingly by both the Army and the Navy. The year ends with the plan of action. More important, the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Army start working together. Perhaps you have a different topic of interest. Let us know in the comments section. And be sure to like and subscribe to encourage us to do more and to stay in the information loop. If you're near Albany in upstate New York, stop by for a visit and check our website for details. Thanks for watching.